All right, now, what we're going to prepare here is an old family recipe. By old, I mean that when my grandfather, who was born in 1891, used to go over to his grandfather's house in Silver City, New Mexico, this is what they had to eat over at Grandpa's house. So in my family, we call this Spanish barbecue. But it's a meat marinade. It takes about a day and a half to make it because it really needs to marinate at least 12 hours. And it deals with flank steak. The reason it deals with flank steak is that flank steak was one of the worst cuts of beef on the cow, and the patron never gave the farmers around him or the people that worked for him, the cowboys, the shoulders and the roasts. They got the ribs, and they got the skirts, and they got the flanks. And the flank steak and the skirt steaks are just about the toughest piece of meat on the cow. And so, as with many cultures of the world, the people who weren't quite so fortunate learned to cook the lesser pieces and create some real masterpieces, and this is one we have in our family. So the first thing you have to do is create a chili marinade. And what we use in this family, or what we have been using, because it's easy, is Las Palmas chili sauce, the red chili sauce, called Chili Colorado. 2 big cans of it. Buy the medium red chili sauce. Don't buy the enchilada sauce, buy the chili sauce. This is the recipe for 4 steaks. This will feed probably 20 people. So with that, 2 cans of chili sauce. One of the keys to the marinade is an oil and vinegar. The vinegar breaks down the meat, helps tenderize it. We like to use red wine vinegar, either Star or Regina. And this is 1 cup of oil and 1 cup of vinegar. And then for the spices, this is a very simple spice profile. This is a cumin-based dish with oregano. This is about half a cup of cumin. And when you buy cumin, for God's sakes, don't go out and buy the shilling stuff. Go find the Mexican part of your store and buy the Tampico chili. A half a cup is just about 2/3 of a 3-ounce bag, so this is about 2 ounces of cumin. Get ground cumin, not the whole cumin, because cumin is tough to grind. Then you also need to get some oregano. That's the other note in this dish. And again, I've gone to Tampico. This is whole oregano. Make sure when you get the oregano, you put it in your hands and roll it like that and crush the whole oregano, and it opens up the flavor. And this is about half a cup of oregano. It ends up being about 2 of the 0.37 ounce Tampico bags. The final thing you may or may not want to throw in is some New Mexico chili powder. How hot do you want it? But this is really good stuff. So a little bit, I don't go overboard because there's enough. The longer it sits in the marinade, the more the meat will pick up the spices. So all you have to do is stir this up, and then we'll wait to prepare the meat. We'll get on to round 2. Okay, the second part is taking care of the meat. Flank steak has a longitudinal grain. It's tough, so you have to beat it up a bit. So I use a little persuader. This worked well on abalone. It works excellent on flank steak. And just watch. Basically, you could use a tenderizer, have it run through the tenderizer at the butcher, but I think it destroys the grain of the meat. And this beats it up just enough that it breaks down the grain. I've done it on both sides, tenderize both sides. Then you take a very sharp knife and diamond score against the grain. You just run the knife across the top and leave a nice score. Opens up the grain of the meat. Cuts a lot of the connective fibers. And leaves lots of pockets for the marinade to get into and seep into the meat, into these. It just does a really good job. And then you cut this into about 1-inch strips. So that makes about 10 strips of meat. And then what you have is a well tenderized, diamond scored, and I've taken most of the fat off the flank steak, but there's not much flank steak. You don't need fat, so try and get off all the fat off the flank steak. And then you just simply put this in the marinade and let it sit for 12 to 15, maybe 18 hours at the most. If you're going to do it more than overnight, you should put it in the refrigerator, but there's enough acid in this that you can leave it overnight without having a problem. So we're going to put the meat aside to marinate, and then we'll talk about how to cook it, and then we'll talk about eating it later. Okay, here we are with a good hot fire that's burned down all the way. So it's generating a lot of heat, a lot of even heat. This is a grilled steak. There's no fat on this meat, so you don't want to overcook it. And you know it's time to turn when you see the meat start to smooth over on the top. It makes like the juices start to flow from the underside. That's the time to turn that piece of meat. Nice grilled other side. This is pure meat, so it's not going to take a whole lot of heat. So good hot fire, good clean fire, and we'll roast these up. Do not overcook the meat. You should be able to pull it apart with a fork. You can cut this with a fork. Can you believe that, cutting flank steak with a fork? But in just a minute, we'll get inside and we'll show you what the finished product looks like. Right now, this piece needs turning. And we're almost ready to eat. Okay, and here we have some meat that's just about ready to come off, and some that I've just put on. And you'll see the texture of the steak after it's cooked versus what it looks like when it's fresh out of the marinade. I'll give you a little close-up view of that. Hope your mouth is watering, because mine is. Okay, well, this is the fun part. I had to salvage a few pieces from dinner because my family ate virtually everything I made. But I put a couple pieces aside to finish this up because I want to pass this on. This is how we do it in our house. You start with a nice fire roasted tortilla, of course buttered. Then layer on a piece of Spanish barbecue, some fresh salsa. At that point, I'm ready to eat, but every once in a while, some really good beans would be a good idea, and this is a really good batch of beans. So you basically have dinner rolled up and ready to go. That is Carne Asada Benavides style, and we call it Spanish barbecue. Been in my family for at least 130 years, and hope you enjoy it as much as we do. Be well.